Alright, so Borderlands 4 has been out for a little over a week. I finished the main campaign,
Looks like the Autumn has placed
almost
another
max
supply
level
pod.
here, as you can
Time to
see. So I
capitalize on
figured it
their
would be a good time
incompetence,
for me
huh?
to make a video about everything in the gameplay that I don't really like. Overall, I've been enjoying the game a lot. I think a lot of the changes are, very welcome, very necessary. I've been pushing for more mobility for, forever. Uh, People who know me know Borderlands is pretty much my favorite modern game series that's still ongoing. My cat's names are Zero and Mordecai. I have a Borderlands tattoo. Um, Also, I just want to clarify that I am not going to be talking about performance issues because in this day and age, I'm not saying it's right, but every game on launch has issues. If you're buying a game at launch and you're surprised that it's buggy, and you're mad about that, like, I'm sorry, but that's kind of on you. I mean, at this point, it's to be expected. Um, but I wanted to get into more of just the things about the actual gameplay that I'm just not crazy about. Um, so, first off, the loot system is a little bit, goofy. I mean, I'm not going to say it's the worst thing ever, but I can't tell you how many of these Rift champions I've beaten, probably at least 40, and I think I've gotten two legendaries out of those, which I understand they're not supposed to be something that you're just getting all the time, but when it's telling you you have a chance to get a legendary and it's not specifying what the actual percentage is, it's really disappointing when you do like 30, 40 of them and you don't, you're getting the same crappy blues over and over again. But then also, getting into that, I guess this is kind of the second thing, some of the legendaries just kind of suck. Like, actually, here, let's go back, take a look at my vault really quick, and just, a lot of the legendaries are so much weaker than, a leveled blue or purple gun that even if they do something cool, they're not worth using. I just picked up yesterday one of these guys here. Which one was it? Uh, was something in here, but I mean, you look at these damage stats, and if you've played the game, you see the comparable damage. Some of them are good, like the Hellwalker's not bad. Uh, Lumberjack, kind of low, but not the worst. Um, First impression, not bad, uh, but I also can't use that. That was, my DLC pre-order gun. Um, but yeah, like some of these stats are just kind of awful. I mean, there we go. At level 32, it's a sniper saying it's doing 190 DPS when, this is a level 26 purple gun pistol and it's doing 634. It just doesn't really make sense to me. Uh, like why even bother at that point? This one right here, level 39, 972, when most comparable guns at that level are doing, 3,000 damage. Um, so yeah, not crazy about that. And then getting back into the Rift Champions, again, that was kind of a factor here. Just beating them doesn't seem like it's all that rewarding. It also just is kind of an irritating process because you have to stay in this tiny little bubble. If you accidentally get knocked out, the fight just ends immediately. I think that's kind of dumb. I think once you get into the bubble, even if they're going to put a time limit to beat the boss, I think once you get into the bubble, the fight should just keep going because I can't tell you how many times, especially because when the Rift Champion spawns, all the enemies that were already there do not despawn. So sometimes you're fighting, a bunch of badasses at the same time you're trying to fight the boss, which goes into my other thing that I was going to get into in a second, that honestly, some of these enemies, just like even the common enemies, seem like they need to be nerfed. Like these guys right here, in any past Borderlands game, like even a badass, you can kill in like three well-placed shots. Meanwhile, with these guys, you know, they have a lot of health and shield. I mean, this isn't a great example because like, he's going down pretty quick. But, like, they do a lot of damage, too. And one badass at this point seems to be enough to wipe, you know, half your health bar, most of your shield. And I'm not saying it's impossible to beat them. I'm not saying it's even really all that hard. It just makes it tedious. It makes you over-reliant on your action skill. You know, constantly trying to hit your rep kit. You know, which, yet another thing. Some of these new mechanics are really cool when they work. You know, the rep kit is awesome, but trying to use it in the heat of combat, half the time it won't let you hit it, and then you end up going down before you can actually get the heal from it. Similar to the grapple. I posted a short, you know, that was just about, I was in the hub area of the augers, and there's that giant pit right in the middle. I needed to get up to a higher spot. I tried to grapple, and I bounced off and got thrown into the pit. And I can't tell you how often that's happened at different times. And it was just, it was just like, why? You know, if you're going to make this feature, just make it work at least most of the time. When I feel like at least half the time, I'm just, you know, I'll grapple something, and it'll either bounce me off the ledge and not actually allow me to climb, or again, it'll just, I won't even make it to the ledge. Which gets into my biggest complaint, and this might be a bit of a hot take for some of you, but I think there is way too much platforming. I've never been a big fan of platforming in first-person shooters. You know, and that's not to say I don't like platformers. Banjo-Kazooie, one of my favorite series of all time, another series I have a tattoo of, you know, is a platformer collectible gathering, you know, it's mainly platforming. But there's a reason that most of the best platformers have been third person. You know, being able to see your entire character is kind of a big deal when you're trying to get onto these platforms, you know, when you're in first person and you don't actually know where your character's feet are in position to you. You know, you don't know what the game considers their actual body and where you're supposed to land. And, you know, that's fine in small doses, but again, I've had several instances now where, you know, I understand, oh, we've added these hover features, we've added these grapple features, and we want you to use them, but there's too much of, you know, you're being forced to use these features that don't really work as well as they should. You know, I was playing with Funky Monkey when we went to fight the Timekeeper, and there was one segment where we were trying to get from one room to another, and I felt that I jumped off the one platform, glided towards the other one, and I was right on top of it, and for some reason I still fell off the ledge and died. You know, and then, okay, now I have to respawn and do this whole thing again. I did it exactly the same way I did it the first time, and I made it across. So it really just is like, again, why are you going to put such a big reliance on these platforming features? And this, when it's not important. You know, the mobility features are great in the combat. Like being able to glide like this, you know, and dodge attacks is awesome. But I don't want to be forced to do a bunch of goofy platforming stuff that really just interrupts the actual gameplay that I'm here for. Again, I don't know, maybe some of you guys really enjoy the platforming in the game. I honestly can't see why anyone would. But, you know, if that's something that you disagree with, I respect your opinion, but we will have to agree to disagree on that. And, you know, but yeah, that's a really big one for me. But yeah. And then my last big thing that I'm sure, I mean, I guess this is kind of a performance thing, is that some of these bosses absolutely need to be nerfed. I mean, anybody who's fought Genone knows that, you know, his actual boss fight is crazy. You know, he literally heals himself faster than you can damage him. When I fought him in his actual mission, I had to let him kill me because I couldn't figure out why he was healing faster than I could damage him, so I finally just kind of decided to start the fight over, and I was able to just do more damage to him more quickly. But, you know, he also regularly spawns as a Rift champion. I ran into him last night, and the fight took 45 minutes of me spawning all three of my Forge drones and hitting him with my whips, and he was still healing faster than I could damage him for like half an hour. And then finally I managed to damage him quickly enough to beat him, but it took way longer than it should have. And even the weekly boss right now, Shadow Pelt, it's he's not he's not quite as bad as Janone because he can be beaten with any loadout, I feel, but the way that his boss fight is built up is just crazy. I mean, you get his whole shield down, which, you know, depending on what weapons you have, especially because a lot of the more powerful weapons, at least with the higher DPS, don't seem to have an element to them. And I get that, like, you have to do that math and take the element into account, but the damage chance and the effect chance on them is a lot lower than it was, you know, in previous games like 3, from what I've seen. So it almost becomes not worth it to dedicate that slot when you're only using it for a specific time. You know, you don't want to be having to change your loadout every time you go into a boss fight. That's just, again, kind of goofy to me, kind of a waste of time. Takes away from the gameplay. That's not what I'm here for, you know. I love playing the game as an RPG, but I don't want to have to keep rebuilding my loadout every 10 minutes just to be able to do the proper damage to a boss. And, you know, with Shadow Pelt, you get his entire shield down, and no matter what you do, he will completely restore his shield in about 10 seconds. So, you know, you have 10 seconds to do as much damage as you can before he restores that shield. You know, the fight is doable, but it could take you 2 hours because you can do, you know, 1/50th, you know, like 2% of his health bar, and then he's going to completely restore his shield, and you have to take down his shield again. You know, and I think that what they should have done, you know, they want to emphasize all these new different abilities that you have and all these different features, you know, especially for Genome. I wish they could still do this. I don't know if it would require them to completely rebuild the asset, but they should make it where you can, you know, grapple them or something right as they're about to use these healing abilities to interrupt it. You know, with Genome, he's healing himself. Maybe even you would get, you know, he still has that heal, but you have 2-3 seconds to try to grapple it out of his hand, and then maybe it would even heal you. You know, something like that. Or again, like maybe with Shadow Pelt, he has some kind of, you know, gland or something that has to open up for him to restore his shield, and if you grapple it, it just interrupts that process. Like, I think that would be a much more balanced way to do that. You know, make the bosses less tedious and frustrating. I don't know how difficult that would be for them to modify at this point, but just an idea. So yeah, those are my main complaints, you know, so far about the gameplay. Again, overall, I'm really enjoying it. There's a couple times where I've just gotten really frustrated. Like, I think I was talking to Funky Monkey the other day, the emphasis on platforming is the main thing that keeps me from saying that this is the best game in the series. You know, I like the way the combat flows, but even right now, you can see I'm fighting like 4 regular enemies. I'm already out of rep kits, and really my only option right now is to activate my action skill. Just because there's so many of them, and they have, you know, too much health and shield and do too much damage. Like, again, I'm still gonna beat them, but I shouldn't, you know, I don't want to play a Borderlands game and feel like I have to be using my action skill. You know, that just, to me, again, takes away from what I'm here for. First and foremost, this is a shooter. You know, I want to use my guns. And, you know, when you're so quickly surrounded, because the enemies seem to just move around the map, too, and will converge on you out of nowhere. You know, last night I was just trying to pick up a collectible, and I think I got hit by 3 waves of enemies each one with multiple badasses in it, to the point that I couldn't even pick up the items that I was getting off of the enemies that I was defeating, because I would go to look at it and all of a sudden I'm getting shot at again by, 2 badasses and 7 regular enemies. Uh, so I had to clear out every single one until before I could pick anything up, which, normally when they introduced the lost loot system, I would say, oh, well, I don't really have to pick all this up because it's going to go into my lost loot. But for some reason, I'm level 48. I'm playing on Ultimate Vault Hunter level 1, or 2, or I don't even know. I completed the weekly mission and got my Hellwalker, but, the lost loot is still saving greens and whites. And I don't understand that. That to me is a big thing that they need to change, because I don't need those weapons. I have a couple $1 million in on my character at any given time. If I see a green that's worth like 50,000, I might pick it up to sell it later. But I'm also not going to be mad if I miss it. As much as I'm frustrated that because my lost loot is filling up with whites and greens, I'm not going to be getting all my blues and purples, which to me is ridiculous. I mean, they should have added some sort of filter option where you can, that way at the beginning of the game, okay, I might want those greens because I might not have anything better. But since I'm higher level, let me set the filter where it only saves, blue and above. Because those whites and greens are kind of meaningless. They might have high damage, but they just don't have those modifiers for, metagaming. And with how reliant this game forces you to be on the meta, because again, some of the bosses are just so unbalanced that unless you have your highest damage build with every element available, it's going to take you forever or just be a huge pain. So yeah, definitely something I think they need to fix. But I think that's about everything. So sorry I'm not more articulate. I was originally going to edit this, actually put clips of the things I was talking about, but to be honest, the memory, my hard drive is full right now. I can't really save all those clips, so I decided to just make one video. But yeah, I appreciate you watching. Let me know what you think, if you agree, if you disagree. And yeah, I appreciate you, all my subs, all my viewers, always. If you like this video, I was thinking about making a video about what characters I think should have been in the game, in the main story, and which ones maybe it doesn't make sense that they are in the game, but more so the ones that I feel there was a good reason that they should have been featured in the main story to some extent. I think that would be a really cool video, so if anybody wants that, please let me know in the comments. And as always, please like and sub if you enjoy. And yeah, thank you so much. I will see you guys next time.